When puberty hits and suddenly you don't recognise your own child. Clinical psychologist Kathryn Berkett says adolescence is the most intense period of brain development since early childhood. She says the teenage years are like an essential software update, which can help explain moody, reckless and avoidant behaviour. Her new book is aptly called What's Going On in There? The Neuroscience of the Adolescent Brain. Morena, Kathryn, thanks for coming in.
Morena.
So, as you say, babies, infants, there's a lot going on, a lot of shedding actually of neural pathways and things. They've got more than they need at that age. Come to adolescence, this is the next biggest development phase. And what is happening?
Quite a lot. But yeah, absolutely. The next developmental phase, if you looked at the brain, it's using more energy now than it has since those first 3 years. But we're actually literally shutting down some of the pathways in the brain, adding some, changing levels of hormones, neurotransmitters. So there's a massive revamp going on.
The shutdown is the interesting bit, isn't it? And is this simply because the brain's got to refocus? It's got to focus on the development that's happening. It's interesting. What would you describe as being part of a shutdown?
Yeah, so sometimes we've explained it as shutdown. I used to when I first sort of started to learn it. But what we see it now is a massive upgrade. And during an upgrade, like you mentioned with the computer thing, you can't access parts of the brain during the upgrade. Because if you're with an adolescent and they're grumpy and they're moody and they're not talking to you about anything, then all of a sudden they come up with this amazing idea of something different. And you go, whoa, wholly out of the box, because it's all there. It's just going through such an upgrade, it's hard to get to. Does that make sense? So I want people to see it as this, because we can't time out. We can't ignore them until they get through it, because the whole process is this huge information uptake.
Yeah, and so it's important to be part of that information uptake. Stay part of it, stay engaged, stay involved.
The right information.
But if anyone who's gone through a software upgrade, things slow down, you're waiting a long time to get to the next thing. That's kind of what the experience is like in some ways for you and for them. Yeah.
Absolutely, which is what I want to sort of get across, is that it is hard, it is difficult, but it is time limited.
Yeah. There's the physiological changes in that respect. There's chemical changes, hormonal changes. Can you explain more?
Yeah, well, fascinatingly, obviously we get a huge surge of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those sort of hormones, and we see the effect on the body. But they actually have effect on the brain, and testosterone affects different parts of the brain to estrogen and progesterone. So it's quite interesting to see quite different changes. And then dopamine, which is another neuromodulator in the brain, that intensifies, so they just create such different outcomes for the brain that would have happened before puberty and that will happen after that sort of first flush.
Some of the changes in behaviour are almost a necessary part of this upgrade and change. For example, this is the time when a young person is beginning to build their independent confidence, and part of that is to push back on parents, push parents away. So there is a kind of a logic to some of the behaviours you'll experience.
Yeah, which is what I was trying to explain in the book, because it's really hard as parents, isn't it? We're suddenly our darling little child and we tell them how to do something and they do the complete opposite, or they don't listen to any of our advice, or they negate what we're talking about. But if you really think about it, if you need to create your new tribe, create your independence, if you keep asking and attending to all the information you've been given by your parents or any elders, how do you learn it for yourself when you're out on your own? So it's this beautiful time of, I need to be independent, but I still need my parent or someone around to be there to catch me when I fall. And we get a bit annoyed about that. Well, you didn't take my advice, so I'm not going to help you when you don't get home on time. Well, actually, not always with boundaries, but we do need to understand that they're not going to listen to us or come to us with all of their problems. They need to separate a little bit.
Yeah, they're trying on all these new things. They're going to get some of it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting point you make. The best response is probably not, I told you so, because actually you want them to be going through this process. How do you deal with it when there is a consequence? I suppose that comes down to an individual sort of parenting style. But if you're starting from the starting point that this is normal, this is part of what they're going through, you can ameliorate your response.
Yeah, and what I'd like parents, and when I say parents, by the way, anyone with these young people, is if that happens, if something happens and they make a mistake and they don't follow what you've said, then next time give them a chance to come up with their own what are you going to do beforehand? You're going out again. Last time you didn't get home in time. It's because your brain's in a bit of an upgrade state. So I want you to make the plan before you go. Let me know, so try and help them become more prepared for it. Do their own planning. Don't ground them or tell them that they're allowed to go out again, because how on earth are they going to practice? So if they fail at something, how can we give them more time, more support to work that one out for themselves?
I mean, that's the very thing that the adolescent brain is doing in some ways as it matures, is actually working out how to do things, right? It'll get some right, it'll get some wrong, but you certainly don't want to stunt that process, and you can help them with that process of anticipating what might happen, what my plan is going to be. If this starts happening at the party, what do I do? And the other point about them wanting the boundaries even as they push back against them, that's really important, right? They don't want 100% laissez-faire. They want at some point for you to say no, or, we're doing this, right? At some point.
Absolutely. And if we keep with them and help them understand, I mean, I certainly know with my kids, there was a lot more discussion, let's say, with my rules than I ever had with my parents. But there was a point sometimes when I'd say, actually, I'm not giving you any reason now. I don't need to. Yeah. And this is just the line in the sand. But they could still push to a certain, why, Mum? What's your reason for that? Could I do this instead? But then it could get to a point where I went, actually, because I might have a reason that I don't want to discuss with them.
Yeah.
And I could, but it wasn't all the time. Do you see what I mean? Quite often I would move on my decisions or that sort of stuff from a discussion with them, because I want them to learn to do that. But there was still times when it was like, no, that's it.
Out and out disobedience is an interesting one. It's not that they've made a mistake. It's that they're defying, to use an old term. Is this part of the process as well? And how do you manage that?
Yeah, and by the way, we're talking about this is about puberty change. So if you've had defiance all their life, then they're potentially a defiant person, do you see? But if you had quite a compliant young person and then they're defiant, I want you to look at your behaviour, because they're trying to stretch their wings. They're really trying to find their own control. And the more you cage them in, the more they're going to pull against that. Do you see? So what I want, and I've had a number of people come to me, my child's got an issue, and we've sat down and chatted, and I'm like, actually, I think the issue is with you as a parent, still trying to hold them close, still trying to protect them, which is completely understandable. But the more you hold them, the more they want to stretch their wings. And that's when it
becomes a head-to-head.
That's when it could become that. Yeah.
You talk about the red and the green brain. I'm familiar with the red and the blue brain. What's the red and the green brain?
Well, funnily enough, it was actually from Kerry, who I sat down. He was kind enough to have a coffee with me, and I was using 3 brains, which I still have in the book, but I mostly do red and green. So it's very similar to Kerry's red and blue. So the bottom is the survival instant brain. The top one is the one that we can be more thinking about, empathic, futuristic, those sorts of things. So
what's happening at this stage to those parts of the brains with your young person?
Well, so much, but one of the really main things is, and that's why I've actually put the orangey brain in the book diagram, because there's a lot going on in the orange brain in the adolescent, and what is there is to do with dopamine and our risk taking and our reward centre, and that gets massively, it's just buzzing out on anything, even just meeting another adolescent or whatever, and the pathway to the cortex, the part of the green brain that says, wait, think about it.
Don't get in that car.
Yeah, that's not got as much supply because it's upgrading, because it's going to be way better after this upgrade. But during the upgrade,
so the buzz is on the up,
it's got some cones on
it. is on the hold.
Yeah, and when we actually scan brains, you can see the difference between that. So during this time, there's significantly more to be led by it feels good. Rather than should I? And even afterwards they go, man, I really shouldn't have done that. And you're like, why'd you do it? And they go, well, I don't know.
Is it the same thing as impulse, or not necessarily the same thing as impulse?
Well, impulse is our desire to get an outcome without the consequences, the should I. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, I would put that in the same sort of space.
Yeah. Okay. Neuroception. Tell me a little bit more about this part of the book.
Oh, huge. I love the idea of neuroception to understand for so many things. We scan, am I safe? And it's a huge concept, because we scan here and now, inside, futuristic, past. If I'm safe and my brain says I'm safe, like right now I feel safe. I can engage with you. I can think about my answers. I can consider my options, all of that. As soon as the red brain, this neuroception, scans and detects any danger, or the orange brain is on extra emotional alert because of this more dopamine that we have in adolescent, the energy comes down away from green brain. So if we feel unsafe or at any stage tired, hungry, which is huge in the adolescent years, then neuroception scans, I'm unsafe, takes energy downwards and we lose energy upwards. It's a very simplistic understanding. It's way more complex
What's the
than that.
impact of losing energy upwards?
Is the first bit that we lose is a part of the brain in the prefrontal cortex that overrides impulses.
Right.
So instantly,
So this is an accelerant on the fire.
yes,
Yeah.
and logic and consequence.
So how can that affect how you are dealing with young people if you don't want to be part of that escalating sense of threat, which just leads them into the how can your own behaviour help mitigate?
So, and that's the understanding, is that once we understand, and certainly I can give you an example with my kids, if my kids start to pick up, even in any of their life, but certainly adolescence, my understanding is they're going into their stress response, their red brain. I just need to make them safe, which is quite a different sensation than we'd usually have. I let them calm down. By the way, I can put in a consequence into the green brain when they're back. I'm not taking that away. But during that time, and creating an environment where they can feel as safe as possible. And often we're on our adolescents' backs. You're moody, you're rude, you're not coming out of your room, you're doing this, you're doing that. And then you put in social media and all of that. They have got a lot of unsafe environment around them. So we need to try and counteract that as much as we can with people around us helping us.
A question from a listener: where's the line between behaviour due to brain upgrade and just being rude? We had a friend's teen over recently who didn't say hi upon arrival, just went straight to the couch and onto the phone scrolling. My intermediate-age kid was even taken aback, thinking they might have a nice time catching up. Trying to talk to the team was like trying to talk to a brick wall. They had no interest in conversation, only joined us for the eating part of the evening. Parents don't tell them to put the phone away and join us with no encouragement to engage. We tried, but the parents just brushed it off. When they left, my kid promised she'll not turn into that, but I'm scared. Lots of parts to that. What's going on with that teen who's just hasn't even said hi and gone and sat down and on the phone? They don't want to. My first thought is they don't want to be there, and they got dragged there, and they're not happy.
Absolutely. That's and by the way, not knowing the situation, I'm just
it's an
making everything up.
hypothesis.
But what we do know is that dopamine surge that I said there's an increased sensitization is going to increase how much pleasure they get from online compared to how much pleasure they would have got with playing with the other friend, the other young person in the space. However, as parents, we would have got more they would have got more pleasure having alcohol when they got there as well, but we're not going to let them engage with that, are we? So we have to be the bigger people, and we have to monitor their use of these devices, because if we let it get away with them, it is very hard for them to monitor their use. We do have to be a lot better at helping them, because if they had disengaged from the phone and they had engaged, they probably would have had a great time. Not a surging dopamine great time, but a long activation of dopamine and felt better afterwards.
That kind of rudeness thing where kids, I mean, the communication drops off for starters, but, is that where you're within your rights as a parent to be saying, when we go to someone's house, we say hello, right?
And we don't go on our phone.
Right.
We don't go on our phone. Or
but at least
for the first hour, you're not on your phone. If we're there for more than an hour and you really aren't enjoying it or whatever, I'd let you. But
so
you,
if they're not
need
intending
to
be rude, they're off in their own world again, as we said, and you've just got to come in and say, this is what we do. Yeah, okay. What have we got here? I have an 11, nearly 12-year-old keen to go on a bus and shopping with her friend without an adult. She says she wants to try some independence. What's a small first step we could take?
And that's completely up to adults, but you really need to get into your own green brain and think, what are the worst things that could happen? Because I promise you, we are over-catastrophizing what can happen to our... I know there's a bit of danger out there, but there is way more danger online if we let our kids stay online and we're letting them do that. So, making sure you've got some timestamps that they're letting you know where they are, or those sorts of things. But we really do need to let them have their independence as much as you can. And if you ask around some friends, not all friends, who are letting their kids have independence, man, it makes a difference for our young people to know that they have control over their lives.
This is also where the Parents Network gets involved, though, and everyone knows where those kids are, and everyone's communicating about where those kids are, right? That's the back channel going on that the kid doesn't even need to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, if they do something a little bit naughty, if they get on the bus and they go maybe to a different mall than they did or something like that, let's not. That's the whole idea, is to get away with something, and that's not going to worry me if they can. Like I let a lot of the kids didn't know how much I knew that they weren't. But then when it was a dangerous decision,
right? So you're analysing what's going on all the time in the context of what you know is going on for this kid.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question. Should this information be given to or discussed with adolescents? Do you talk to them about what's going on with them, or
absolutely? If you feel that it's right, I've trained some kids in this stuff. I've talked to them. I'm not. That's not my biggest gig. But the book's written so that people can read it, and adolescents could. There's summary bits of the chapters, so they could just read the summaries. But I've known young people who've come to my adult presentations, and I catch up with them afterwards, and they said, "Man, that was helpful. That was
really
useful."
Interesting, because sometimes we can overanalyze, right? But for some kids, perhaps, who are wondering themselves what's going on with them, or why this relationship's changed, or why they're feeling the way they are, it's worth at least at high level telling them, here's what's happening.
Or let them read it themselves.
There you go. What else have we got here? You talk about, how long is the next question? And we know that it can be the early 30s until the adult brain is fully matured, depending on a few independent factors, some late teens, some early 30s. That's a long time. But when we talk about this shutdown, this software upgrade, how long are we talking generally?
So when I say ages and stuff, it still is how long as a piece of string. But generalising, well, absolutely it starts at puberty. So whatever time, we've got a lot more precocious puberty happening as well. So it starts
as young as 9 even. Yeah.
Oh, and I hate to say it, but I've met a client at 5. Yeah.
Goodness me.
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. So when puberty happens, these changes will happen in the brain. What feels like, is those first waves of quite intense changes will happen until around about mid-adolescence, 15-ish, 16-ish. Okay? So that could be quite a long space of time for those in early puberty. Then from 15, 16-ish, that's when that pathway between the should I and the go do it is really starting to strengthen. So you can see them starting to learn to put the brake system on. Around about 18-ish, 19-ish, we get another upgrade where they can put everything together and have this overview of the world. But that's still what we call the skilled driver. You still need to learn to drive on country roads or whatever. So that skilled driver, which is the last little bit, could go out to 25, 32. Do you see? So there's stages. It's not all this massive upgrade until they're 35.
The other thing to be wary of is how intense this experience is for them.
Yes.
And especially as they are building their own independent groups, or being rejected from a clique, I'm just reading here, can be quite biologically intense. It's visceral. Or missing out opportunities to be with their group can be very intense. So something that looks completely irrational and over the top to you is again actually physically happening for them. As well as
especially
emotionally.
estrogen, so oxytocin, so more likely on the female end of that spectrum. We literally activate oxytocin. We fall oxytocin in love with other women, other girls, so that we can form this clique who will then help us raise our babies, do you see? So for me, when I got kicked out of a group, it felt a bit stink. But now they get kicked out daily. They know when they're invited to any party. So viscerally, their biology says,
threat, isn't it?
If you're not part of this group, you're not going to be able to protect your baby. Do you see? It becomes really biological. They're not thinking that, but that's some of their body activation. So this is why biologically understanding it is good, but recognising that they're going through so much more than we had to go through because of this access to online media, social media,
that threat
gaming.
you were talking about is just that much more kind of ever present. Yeah. Thanks so much, Kathryn Berkett. Her book is called What's Going On in There? And it is published by Mary Egan Publishing. Thanks for coming in.